some key things that I've learned. First and foremost is vulnerability and transparency is so critical. I had, just to give you an example of what I mean by that, I remember I was coaching a young woman, and there was a very difficult topic that she wanted to bring to the table. And I could tell she was mustering up courage to share, that it wasn't, something that was easy for her. And so it probably took a couple of sessions before she finally decided to share with me. And once she did, I said to her, I don't want to make this about me in any way, shape, or form, but would you mind if I shared something with you? Because what you shared with me, what I so appreciate, but it brought up some things for me. And she says, sure, absolutely. And I said, I shared a personal story that was similar to hers. And when I was finished, she exhaled really loudly. It's the loudest I've ever heard anybody exhale before. And I said, my goodness, that was quite an exhale. What was that about? And she says, Pam, you have no idea how good it is to know that you don't have, she used another word, your crap together all the time too. And that was a turning point for me, because what that did was that created a deeper connection between she and I, and it impacted the trust level between she and I, so that she knew that she had that safe space where she could show up and be herself.
Hace 15 años, cuando comenzaba yo a investigar y explorar sobre el mundo del coaching, conocí el trabajo de mi extraordinaria invitada el día de hoy. Una increíble coach que por 2 décadas ha ayudado y acompañado a miles de personas a transformar su visión y modo de pensar de uno de no puedo a un claro que puedo hacerlo. Yo soy Efraín Mendicuti y he creado este espacio para conversar con algunos de los más destacados líderes de pensamiento, negocios, educación y cultura en el mundo sobre su trayectoria, lecciones y mejores prácticas, y compartir así con todos nosotros su pensamiento, estrategias y recomendaciones para hacer en nuestras vidas de lo cotidiano algo extraordinario. Esto es Entre Mentores DLC. Actualmente miembro de la facultad, asesora y mentor coach del Executive and Professional Coaching Certification Program de la Universidad de Texas y fundadora de What's Within You, acompáñenme a aprender de la extraordinaria Pam Thomas. Pam, I am so happy that after so many years, I finally get to sit down with you and have you here on the show. Thank you.
Oh, it is a pleasure and an honor. Are you kidding? Thank you.
I'm really excited to be sharing this time with you and learning from you. And right before we started recording, you mentioned to me that you've listened to a few of the episodes of Entre Mentores. So you've seen that I like to start way in the beginning and learning from you. So why don't we start at the beginning and you share with us a little about your trajectory, your experience, and basically the path that you've walked through that have brought you to this point in your life and your career.
Well, it's interesting because I was thinking about this earlier today, and I had a mentor once say to me, Pam, people don't care about the letters behind your name, and they don't care about the training you've gone through. What they care about are the fires you've walked through that are going to help them walk through their own. And, when I think about my trajectory, I've been coaching since 2005. And, my coaching and my specialty and the areas that light a fire for me have changed as I've walked through fires. And so where I started in 2005 is not where I am today. So it's been a wild journey, and I've loved every single second of it. I think the most beautiful thing about coaching, or at least being a coach, is the things that I've learned from my own clients that have helped me to become a better person.
What got you into coaching?
That's an interesting question. What got me into coaching? I accidentally came across coaching. I co-owned a internet production company, and this was before Facebook. So we were creating interactive websites, and it just so happened we were attracting a lot of coaches. And this was in the early 90s when coaching was kind of the Wild West of coaching. And the coaches kept saying to me, Pam, why aren't you coaching? Why aren't you coaching? This is what you're doing. And I kept saying, well, yeah, no. And, years progressed and I'd get the same question. And my answer was, well, because I'm working on my master's in industrial organizational psychology. And I think after probably the 8th coach who asked me, why aren't you coaching? I finally decided, you know what? The universe is trying to tell me something and I better pay attention. And so as it turns out, what I've been doing a good majority of at least from the time I was a teenager until now has been coaching. I just didn't know it had a name. And so I took the plunge.
Love that. So you just touch base on something that I'm really interested in discussing with you, because I've also pursued a career as a coach in the last few years as well. I also come from the internet industry, and it's very interesting because a lot of coaches that I know that I've met along the years come from a very similar background. Yeah. It's interesting. But also what's interesting is that it's people kind of have a calling towards different jobs and different types of work and labor. And I think that, people who get into coaching and have this calling, we've been doing it for so long, even without preparation. But preparation is really necessary, because there's a lot of folks out there who are, calling themselves coaches because they have this calling and these skills of listening to people, learn and kind of being able to give some type of advice, but that is not really coaching, right? So what's been your path, like all your training and education, because you've spent a lot of time training yourself.
I have spent a lot of time training. Gosh, and it's interesting. When I entered coach training school in 2005, I thought I was going to learn how to become a more effective coach, because now I knew what I'd been doing was some iteration of coaching. What I didn't realize was how much I was going to learn about me and how much I was going to grow as a person as a result of going through the coach training. That was the most amazing and surprising gift, if any. And I think that helped me to kind of fine tune not just what I wanted to do as a coach, but who I am as a person. I was on a trajectory that was not going up; it was going down. And coaching, and this is going to sound dramatic, but it's true. Coaching literally saved my life.
How so?
Well, because I grew up as a codependent, people-pleasing peacekeeper, I found myself molding and melding and doing things and settling in jobs that I hated and settling in relationships that just weren't right. And I wound up absolutely miserable. But I painted this picture perfect world on the outside, when inside it wasn't picture perfect. I remember as a child, my Nana used to say, Pam, you live in a beautiful house, but the walls are crying. And my internal walls were crying. To the outside world, it looked great, but inside it wasn't. And it led me to almost becoming an alcoholic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Is that why you practice? The practice that you founded is what's within you?
Yes, actually that is. Because I really found that when we spend time working on who we are and what makes us tick as people, everything is a representation of what comes from the inside out. And so that's why I became a coach, and that's why I do mindset work today.
That's really great. Now you mentioned, and I want to double click on what you just said.
Yeah, sure.
What's clicking inside of us, what's within us, and what makes us tick, and can that change over time? Like, because you work a lot with mindset, right? And something that I love is actually a book that I really love is Carol Dweck's Mindset. I
Absolutely.
think it's really good. I love her work around that. But one thing that people still in this time and age, a lot of people still have a very fixed mindset and think that once, the path they once started on, it's the only one that they can walk on. And that is not true, right?
It is not true. We as human beings can change and grow. We never stop. The only thing that stops us and gets in our way is that belief that we can't. And that inability or that lack of motivation to want to grow and to change. I have a philosophy. The day I stop growing and changing is the day that I've taken my last breath, because there's always something new to learn, and there's always different ways in which I can expand myself as a human being. So who I am today is yes, while it's anchored in some core beliefs and values, what I do and how I show up is only going to continue to change as I continue to change and grow and become even healthier than I am today.
So you work with a lot of people and you've helped thousands of people over the years. How can a person start finding new things that they love? And because it's funny, because one of the worst advices I think that everybody gives is find your passion and do what you're most passionate about. If you find your passion and if you work on your passion, you will never have to work one day in your life. And I think that's a very romantic thing, and everybody loves hearing that, but really, how many lucky ones know what they're passionate about from the start? And how can people really start learning what they're passionate about, actually?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I have to agree with you. I think that's one of the biggest obstacles, is people saying, I have no idea what my passion is. I have no idea what my purpose is. And, that becomes a frustrating exercise, trying to figure it out. One of the things that I think is really important is paying attention to themes. Things that have been showing up in your life repeatedly. For example, I'll give you a great example. Ever since I was about 5 years old, and my dad has reminded me of this, I have always had a knack for wanting to help people get rid of pain. So even in kindergarten, I had people coming to me because they were upset or hurt. I went back and looked at some of my yearbooks from high school, and a lot of the things that people signed is, thanks so much for being there. Thanks for listening. Thanks for providing that shoulder. Thanks for helping me to feel better. So there was a pattern. There was a pattern there. That's something that I am passionate about. And I was very lucky to figure it out sooner rather than later. But I think if we look for themes of things that have repeatedly shown up where we just feel good doing them, doesn't matter what it is. You might love to cook and it makes you feel great. And, that can be part of your passion. Being a creative individual, maybe you like to paint, maybe you like to try different creative modalities. Those are things just to pay attention to. When you're doing something, pay attention to how you feel. If it feels good, there's a reason it feels good. Spend some time exploring why it feels good.
And can someone turn their passion into their purpose?
Oh, I think you can. Yeah, I definitely think you can.
Really love that. And I think that's something that's the kind of internal work that every person should be doing, right?
Absolutely. I tell my clients an awful lot. It's really important that you figure out what makes you, what makes you happy, what helps you to be the most fulfilled person. And what that feels like. Paying attention to those feelings. I think it's really important that we become our own cake, so to speak, so that everything else, all the external stuff, the nice external stuff like the compliments and what have you, becomes the icing and not something we're chasing after.
Right, absolutely. So let me ask you something about your clients.
Sure.
Who's looking for coaching right now? What I'm trying to say is there's just like with psychotherapy, there's kind of a mistaken stereotype of the people who look for coaching, or a lot of people say, I don't go to psychotherapy because I'm not I'm not crazy. I don't need to go to the psychologist. And people who say, I don't have a performance problem. I don't need a coach. I know what I want. Who or how can people, just learn or find out that they actually want to work with a coach, or they would be better off working with a coach maybe, or getting some type of help?
Yeah, well, I liken it to an athlete. Some of the best athletes that are out there today have been coached because they want to be the best on top of their game. It's the same thing whether it's your personal life or your professional life. Coaching helps you to see the blind spots you didn't see before. It helps you to create awareness that that's going to be helpful to you being on top of your game, personally and professionally. So anybody who's willing and wanting to have that edge, if you will, to be on top of their game can benefit from coaching. Anybody who's wanting to change and grow and may need a little help and support because there might be some obstacles, such as those limiting beliefs and the negative stories we tell ourselves on a regular basis.
Before we dive deeper into the people who are getting help, it's very important to understand the difference between a coach and a mentor and a therapist. Because people, actually, I have a client who was asking me just this morning, like, hey, so will you be mentoring me? And no, I'm going to be coaching you. But what's the difference? So how do you explain the difference between a mentor and a coach and a therapist and a friend and a cheerleader and right?
And the list could go on and on and on and on and on and on.
Absolutely.
Well, I mentor new coaches when I'm mentoring them for their certification. And part of that is helping them to fine tune their coaching skills. So I'm giving them practical feedback on how to best utilize their coaching skills and better to develop their coaching skills. That's mentoring. I may be showing them some things. That's mentoring. Coaching is about asking, I truly believe my clients are amazing human beings. And all they need is maybe a little extra support in asking all the right questions to help them unearth some of the information that has been buried under some of the negative stories they've been telling themselves. Coaching is about getting a client from where they currently are to where they want to go, and we're helping them bridge the gap by asking them those questions to help them to create that roadmap that's going to get them from where they are to where they want to go. And therapy is wonderful, and there's great use for therapy, but therapy is about dealing with the hurt, the past pain, the past trauma. And whereas coaching is more forward moving, it's from where you are right now to where you're wanting to go. And how are we going to get you there?
It's all about clarity.
Yes, absolutely.
So
yeah.
You're mentoring a lot of new coaches.
Yeah.
Right? And we were discussing earlier the importance of training, and this is not something to improvise on. Like, improvisation cannot be part of coaching. It's very important that people who really have, the calling to support people, to actually accompany people in their, in bridging that gap that you just mentioned. Training, upskilling ourselves, learning permanently, basically, it's very important. What kind of training should a coach go through? Because I know there's a lot of people who are listening to us that are interested in becoming a coach, in helping more people. So what does that look like? Like, what type of training? How long does it take? Because also there's, some programs out there that tells you that come here for a weekend and you'll get your certification, right? That's not it at all. So how much do we need to study and prepare ourselves?
I think it's an ever evolving learning process. I started training in 2005, and to this very day, I still take training classes because there's always room for improvement. And I think when it comes to training, it's about finding a program that is going to provide you with the most comprehensive approach to coaching, helping you to access the skills that you already have, but through the framework of coaching. Because coaching is different to consulting. Coaching is different to providing someone with advice. It's asking those questions and not being afraid to ask those deep questions that are going to get somebody to think below the surface. And there are all sorts of wonderful training programs out there. It's just a matter of finding one that works for you and that fits. And it also depends too, if you're wanting to become a certified coach, say through, for example, through the International Coach Federation, there are certain requirements that you must meet in order to do that. And they guide you through those requirements, but they also give you a list of coach training programs that are ones that meet their requirements. So it really depends on what your aspirations are. But it's really important to make sure that you're expanding your coaching approach, and that it's not consulting and advising and fixing. We're not about fixing our clients. Our clients aren't broken. Okay, I don't come to the table as an expert in my client's life. I don't. There are days when I'm not even sure I'm an expert in my own life sometimes. So to think that I know what's best for my clients is not helpful to them. So yeah.
Of course, that's really important, and that's something that every person who aspires to become a coach have to understand. No? And it's not about having all the answers, but rather asking the right questions. Yeah. Or asking questions. I'm not sure if it's always the right questions, but it's like asking the questions and asking the uncomfortable questions that a person might not be willing to ask themselves. No.
And I think too, when you're getting trained as a coach, it's really helpful to have opportunities to practice, to try different things on for size, to be a part of what we call practicums, where you're actually practicing and getting feedback from an experienced coach as well as your peers, so that you're learning what's working and learning about the things that could be improved upon. So I'm a big proponent of coaching programs that give you the opportunity to practice.
I love that. And what's more, there's a few programs that require you to have an X amount of hours of practice before they actually give you the certification. It's very important you get those flying hours out there.
Yes. No? Beautiful way to put it. Flying hours. That's right.
Antes de continuar con este episodio, déjame platicarte que Entre Mentores DLC es presentado por Ricolto Café, una empresa 100% mexicana que desde hace 20 años ha llevado la experiencia del mejor café gourmet de México a miles de oficinas en este país. Hoy, Ricolto Café llega también hasta nuestros hogares a través de su nueva tienda en línea. Puedes conocerlo mejor y hacer tu pedido de cosecha especial de Veracruz, mi favorito, o de Chiapas en grano o molido en ricoltocafé.com.mx. Eso es Ricolto con K de kilo. Visita ya ricoltocafé.com.mx y lleva el mejor café de México hasta tu hogar con Ricolto Café. So, once you start your coaching practice, there's a lot of people who, I think there are two types of people who get into coaching. People who have always wanted to help others and support others, and it's a calling in a way. And people who, they become great mentors. They know a lot and have deep experience in one thing in particular, in one industry, in one, in one type of job. And they're really good at giving advice. And they think that they can become either consultants or coaches in that branch in particular. And they think it might be a very good business for them. They open up their firms, and then no one comes knocking. It's not if you build it, they will come. They won't come. Right? It's not like that. So how does one get started on this? how can a new coach, some of the folks that you're mentoring or training, how can they start their professional practice? Actually?
Sure. In working with my own mentor coach for 8 years, she was amazing. That was one of the questions I first asked her when I first started coaching is, how do you tell a new coach how to get clients? And she says, I tell them to go out and do the things that they love. Now, I know we're in the middle, we're towards the tail end, or we're in a pandemic, so we're not going out nearly as much. But the reason she said that is because, when you're showing up in a space where you're doing something you love with people that you don't know, you're already kind of in a warm space because you're all there for a similar purpose and a similar reason. I'll take, for example, I love to cook. So one of the things I love to do is take cooking classes. And when I take cooking classes, I meet new people all the time. And what's the first thing people ask when they meet you for the first time?
What do you do?
What do you do? Absolutely. And so you begin striking up a conversation. And that is one of the greatest ways to get people to know who you are and what it is you do. So you start developing a client base. I think too, one of the biggest obstacles, and this is something that I fell into the trap of, was worrying about the bottom line. How many clients I needed in order to make X amount of money. What that did was that created a situation where my clients became dollar signs. And that's not a real good place to come from. It's really kind of a lack mindset. And if I were my own client, I don't think I'd want to be a dollar sign. I want to be a person. So I had to, really shift my perspective, because my clients aren't dollar signs to me. They're human beings that I absolutely care about and adore. I think they're amazing. And so remembering why you got involved in coaching in the first place. If you're in it just solely for the money, I'm going to tell you, you're probably in it for the wrong reason.
It might not be as good as a business as you thought it would, right? If it's only about the money, of course. Definitely. So I want to go back to a couple of things that you mentioned. First, sure. I want to talk about imposter syndrome and perfectionism as well. I think those are very tied actually together.
I know nothing about either one of those things. Nope.
And I also want to talk a little about the lessons that you've learned from your clients. So let's start there, because you mentioned there's a lot of things that you've learned from your clients as well. And I love that. I think that we always have the opportunity to, I call it softly learning, or in Spanish, aprender suavecito. And the reason why I call it this, like learning softly, because often life will present us with big lessons in the form of a huge trial, a huge challenge. I'm just going through what my dad, my dad had a stroke recently, and just to see him in his condition, I think he in particular has so many lessons to learn from this very hard experience. But at the same time, me as his son, and just watching him and go and helping him, and my mom and the family, there are a lot of lessons that I also have to learn from this experience. The lessons that I can learn from this experience in particular are much more softer than the lessons he has to learn, because he's going through, recovering from stroke. I'm learning from watching the whole thing. That's learning softly to me. Like, you're not going through and we have to take advantage of those opportunities, but most people won't. Right? Like, we won't listen to the lessons until something really harsh happens, and that's tough. So every time that we got the opportunity to learn from other people's experiences, I think it's an amazing opportunity. What have you learned?
I don't disagree with you. And again, I am terribly sorry about your dad, but glad to hear that his prognosis is good. That's awesome. Yeah. Oh gosh, I've learned so much. I've learned a lot about me as a person, I think, but some key things that I've learned. First and foremost is vulnerability and transparency is so critical. So critical. I had to give you an example of what I mean by that. I remember I was coaching a young woman, and there was a very difficult topic that she wanted to bring to the table. And I could tell she was mustering up courage to share, that it wasn't, something that was easy for her. And so it probably took a couple of sessions before she finally decided to share with me. And once she did, I said to her, I don't want to make this about me in any way, shape, or form, but would you mind if I shared something with you? Because what you shared with me, what I so appreciate, but it brought up some things for me. And she says, sure, absolutely. And I said, I shared a personal story that was similar to hers. And when I was finished, she exhaled really loudly. It's the loudest I've ever heard anybody exhale before. And I said, my goodness, that was quite an exhale. What was that about? And she says, Pam, you have no idea how good it is to know that you don't have, she used another word, your crap together all the time too. And that was a turning point for me, because what that did was that created a deeper connection between she and I, and it impacted the trust level between she and I, so that she knew that she had that safe space where she could show up and be herself. But it required me to be vulnerable. And so I learned that valuable lesson that my clients are not just engaging with me as a coach, they're engaging with me as a person. I don't make coaching sessions about me, but I have no problem being vulnerable and transparent. And I do that on my blog, and I'm doing that in my book. And when it's appropriate, I do that with my clients. And that was a key learning piece, was to not paint the picture of perfect, but instead paint the picture of real and just be real. The other thing I learned that has been absolutely foundational is to remain curious at all given moments. And so I started doing this many years ago, but I will, before I get into a session with a client, before they call me, I will say, I wonder what fill-in client's name is going to teach me today. And what that does is that gets my mindset in that learning and curiosity mode, so that rather than come at it from, oh, I'm an expert, I understand mindset, I've read all the books, I've gone through the trainings, I'm allowing my client to teach me about their mindset as it pertains to them. And so I'm learning about them, and I'm really listening. And from there, I can ask those questions that need to be asked.
Really like that. Going back to vulnerability, it's a concept. It's a concept and a word that I think it's become it's become a kind of a trend.
Yeah.
And of course, we have great examples with Brené's work on vulnerability and her books around daring to lead and daring greatly, and I can't remember the name of the other one.
The Gifts of Imperfection.
I think so. No, and so a lot of people are talking about being vulnerable, and vulnerability is a very good thing.
Yeah.
Still, it seems to me that a lot of leaders, especially the more senior leaders in organizations, are still not accepting the concept. Like, they will talk about the concept of vulnerability, and it's become part of the organizational and corporate lingo. And I don't think I can think of a corporation that's not talking in a way in their leadership circles about vulnerability. But in the end, in reality, I don't think they're actually showing up as vulnerable as they could. No?
Right.
What do you think about that? Like, what are you seeing on that?
I don't disagree with you. I do some coaching work with a wonderful organization that was developed by two amazing women called the Boulder Company. And one of the things we do a lot of work around is emotional intelligence. And so vulnerability comes into play an awful lot with emotional intelligence. And so one of the things we talk about a lot is creating that safe environment where you can connect with the people that you work with, where you see them as human and they see you as human, so that you're connecting not just as two colleagues, but as two human beings. And leading with the heart, which is something that for a lot of people can be very scary, and some people consider it to be soft. It's not. It's probably the most courageous thing you can do, and it takes a heck of a lot of strength to be able to be a leader that leads from the heart and is vulnerable.
So we mentioned the imposter syndrome and perfectionism a few moments ago, and I have to ask, how closely, how tied together are, imposter syndrome and perfectionism to the lack of psychological safety in an organization?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, so I really think that the negative narratives of imposter syndrome and perfectionism are very much aligned. Perfectionism and the need to be perfect, that to me anyway is a form of making sure that we're in control and that everything is safe and that we've got our guardrails in place. Because if I'm perfect and I'm doing everything just right, I don't open myself up for criticism. And for a lot of people, criticism and judgment and rejection are really difficult to deal with. The imposter syndrome piece is, I don't have my stuff together. Who's going to want to work with me? I couldn't possibly do this stuff. Why am I even thinking about doing this stuff? When in reality, if we peel that away and look at what's really the trigger, is it really a matter of, I'm afraid to fail? I'm afraid that I can't do it just right. So I think there is some crossover between perfectionism and imposter syndrome for sure. Absolutely.
And how is that, like, if a leader, tends to be a perfectionist because they want to be on the safe side, not be open to criticism and not, and trying to control everything, how does that affect the psychological safety of the team?
Well, it affects it in such a way that people are afraid to show up as themselves, and they're also afraid. They can also be afraid of making mistakes. And so what we're doing when we're in that space as a leader, where we're demanding perfection from ourselves and from others, is we're cutting off the opportunity to learn from the mistakes we're making, so that we can better improve the services we offer, the way we function as a team. If you're constantly expecting people to come from that space of perfectionism, you're going to be disappointed every single time, because there's not a human being on this planet that's perfect. There isn't. And that opportunity to grow and learn and to become effective leaders and to become effective team players and to become effective in our jobs, that's important. And if we try to come at it from that space of perfectionism, we aren't going to learn. We're not going to grow. We're going to stunt our teams. We're going to stunt the growth of our organization. And it's a shame.
Absolutely. So let me change lanes for a minute here. And,
sure.
I don't know if you can see the DeLorean right behind me.
I can, yeah.
So if Doc Brown were to show and give you the keys to the DeLorean, to what point in time would you travel to? Maybe it's to the past, maybe it's to the future, to see and do what?
Oh, wow. You stumped me with that question. Where would I travel to? I'd go backwards. I'd go back to 1985, the year I graduated high school, to talk to me as an 18-year-old.
What would you say? What would you tell yourself?
That all the crappy stories that you're currently telling yourself, that's just data. It's information to guide you. Use it to guide you. Don't use it to dim your shine and to cover up who you are. Be who you are and know that everything's going to fall into place, and you will find your tribe. You don't have to mold and meld and squeeze yourself into places and with people that don't fit.
Love that. And I love that. You will find your tribe.
Yeah.
And actually it's something that I share a lot and I discuss a lot with some clients. It's like, we all have to find our tribe, and a tribe has its own calling of the tribe, no?
Yeah.
So what would your tribes be?
My tribe would be all about just being in integrity and being authentic. My tribe would actually be a quote by Einstein that I have tattooed on my wrist.
Oh.
Be a voice, not an echo.
Oh, I love that.
Yep. Be a voice, not an echo. That's what my tribe would be calling out.
Love that so much.
Yeah.
Be a voice, not an echo.
Yeah.
Love it. I really like that.
Me too.
So from your own voice, when a person realizes or starts listening to their own voice and start, acting with integrity and just building ourselves as a person and, building our lives, and you realize that your life is not necessarily your professional career or just your personal life, but it's a whole, right? So we have to think of everything as a whole in our lives. So one of the things that we start doing, especially leaders like yourself who have been helping so many people in the last 2 decades already.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's amazing. It's really
15
impressive.
years, it's almost 2 decades, yeah.
So when you're doing that, it's there is no way that a leader as productive as you can do everything that you do if you have not built a certain set of habits and routines.
Yep.
So what habits and what routines have you integrated into your life that helps you be as productive as you are?
Well, self-care is huge for me. I am a self-care proponent of the highest order because I recognize that if I'm not taking care of me, my clients are going to get fried and crispy Pam, and fried and crispy Pam isn't pretty, and I don't want them getting fried and crispy Pam. So I have, over the years, developed what I call my morning ritual. I get up at 4 a.m. every morning, and part of my morning ritual is to meditate, to journal, and to read, and to also exercise. And that's what helps me stay grounded and present throughout the day and avoid being fried and crispy Pam.
How many years has it been since you started waking up at 4 a.m.? And how did you do that? Because I personally wake up at 5, and it took me a lot of years to get to that. But why 4 a.m. and how did you start doing it?
Well, 4 a.m., I'm a morning person anyway, so it's perfect. I used to get up at 5, but 1 hour less didn't make a difference for me. And I recognized that if I rushed to get started in my day, because I used to jump out of bed at 5 o'clock and hit my email like my hair was on fire. And not a good way to start my day. And that was before I started coaching, actually. That was when I was co-owner in that internet production company. I felt like I always had to be on the go. And so when I became a coach, and it was through the training, because through the training, we learned about personal foundation and about taking care of ourselves and making sure that we were always recharging our battery so that we could be really effective. And so I think it's been the last, I'm going to say 5 years that I actually have a system that feels nice and works for me. Prior to that, it was other things like reading and exercising. But now I think I found the magic components, for me anyway, so that I start my day. And I don't like to rush. So my first calls sometimes are at 7 a.m. because I have clients overseas. And so I want to make sure that I'm getting the time that I need to journal and to write. And I get some really cool ideas journaling. So I need to give myself plenty of time to journal and not rush it.
That's good. I call it my it's my personal time, my holy hour. It's a gift to oneself, right? It's like, this is a gift for me,
Yeah.
because people will ask you like, why would you wake up so early? And well, because it's a gift to myself. It's something that it's, I get to do all this stuff. I get to read whatever I want to read. I get to exercise how I want. I get to, meditate. I get to do all these things that if I were to wake up 2 hours later, just like anybody else, I would not have the chance to do this.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
So it's an amazing gift to oneself.
Oh, it's a beautiful gift. And by extension, you're giving gifts to other people too. So
Absolutely.
Yay. We all win. Woohoo!
Absolutely. Love that. Before I ask you the last two questions, where can people find you online and connect with you?
Oh, the best place is my website, and that's what'swithinyou.com.
Perfect. And that's with what's within you with a U at the end.
You can get it either way.
Okay.
If you do YOU or U, it'll redirect to the right place. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So if you had to go back, if you got the chance to, get the keys to the DeLorean and go back and talk to your 18-year-old self, or maybe to your, 20 or 30-year-old self, whatever time, what book would you recommend yourself to read? Like it's a game changer or a life changer for you?
My goodness, I have so many books that I love. Oh, one book.
Or well, we can do 2 or 3.
Well, you mentioned Brene Brown already. She's my spirit animal. I absolutely love anything she writes. So I would definitely recommend her books. Another book. One that I read most recently, as a matter of fact, it's called Chatter by Ethan Kross. And I can't remember the subtitle. I know I'm going to hack it, but fantastic book. And it's all about the mindset. I have been studying mindset and the negative narrative since I was 10 years old. I'm now 54. That's 44 years.
Wow.
So I've read a lot of books over the years, but that's one that stands out really a lot.
What got you studying mindset at 10 years old?
I wanted to figure out what was wrong with me.
Wow.
Because I thought there was something wrong with me because I had negative thoughts. And what nobody told me, because they didn't know, was that as human beings, we have that penchant. Our brains are wired for negative thoughts. It's called negative bias. And there was nothing wrong with me. I just didn't know it.
That's so good for you to share. I think that we are all, in that combat every single day.
Yeah.
Every single hour. Like we have negative thoughts, and sometimes we will get even scared a little. Like, why am I thinking this?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's perfectly natural. I mean, if you think about being human, we have 60,000 to 80,000 words or thoughts processing on a daily basis. That's a thought at 1.2 seconds coming at you. Of all those thoughts, you're going to have some negative thoughts. And there is a thing called negative bias that makes us predisposed to having those negative thoughts.
Yep.
So it's just data. Just data.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just data.
I'm really happy that you shared that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
So the whole premise of Entre Mentores is to learn how leaders and great mentors and coaches like you turn the day-to-day stuff in their lives into something extraordinary. Mm-hmm. So how does Pam Thomas transforms the daily stuff into something extraordinary?
Oh, that's a lovely question. I'm currently doing that by putting all of the fires I've walked through in a book. It's been 3 years in the making, but growing up in a dysfunctional household, I was predisposed to a lot of negative. And so I'm using that negative for good, to help other people become a voice and not an echo.
I love that. Just be a voice, not an echo. Mm-hmm. Love that. Thank you very much for sharing that and sharing all those lessons. And I think it was a conversation full of insights and lessons. So thank you very, very much, Pam, for spending this hour with me and just sharing all these amazing insights with the people who's listening to us right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been just an absolute joy. Keep making a difference because this is awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We will. You too, please. Let's do this. Let's not wait another 10 years before we get...
Yes, please. Let's not do that. Not another 10 years. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed sharing this time with you. Before we leave, I just want to acknowledge you for the amazing work that you were doing. And, I've been reading the things that you post for so many years. And so thank you very much. You've been a great mentor to me, even at the distance. So thank you very much. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Y muchísimas gracias también a todos ustedes por escuchar este y todos los episodios de Entre Mentores DLC. Recuerden, este es un programa semanal, así es que si no lo han hecho ya, suscríbanse y compartan este y todos los episodios de Entre Mentores DLC, porque estoy seguro de que entre sus amigos, familiares y colegas hay muchísimas personas que se pueden beneficiar muchísimo de los consejos y lecciones que grandes líderes como Pam hoy nos están compartiendo. Muchas gracias como siempre a Ricolto Café, el mejor café de México, para acompañarme en esta aventura de vida todos los días. Yo soy Efraín Mendicuti y esto es Entre Mentores DLC. Hasta la próxima.